on that team, Jason, too?
If I'm not mistaken, the steering committee was myself, Sheila, Bobby Dickerson, Keith, Cindy Bauer, Jeff Dolbeck, and Steve Hall.
See that he was on that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I believe that was it.
And the team was very helpful towards contributing throughout the course of the project. And I think it was fair to say that when we met a couple of weeks ago, everyone was in full alignment.
I got a question. How many different employees do you think we spoke to besides them?
Like frontline.
In every department?
We were here for 2 solid days talking to department heads and key management staff, key supervisors, so I bet we talked to 30 or so, yeah.
From the Golf Parks and Rec, I think I had 2 or 3 from every department inside of Golf Parks and Rec. All the users.
Right.
What's a realistic implementation time? Is it 6 months? Is it 2 years?
1 year.
2 years would be too long. We don't have enough oomph in us to get through a project like that. So there's a balance. 6 months is pretty tight. Actually, a year to 18 is kind of a sweet spot that folks work towards. And frequently there are some phases within that where it's broken into some kind of key milestones. Let's get finance up, let's get payroll up. So there's different logic to when those go lives make sense in terms of quarterly processes and W-2s and things like that, and, year-end close and those kinds of things. But that's a pretty common range. Too much over 2 years is exhaustive to the
I just heard all kind of horror stories about implementation and things dragging on and maintaining dual systems. I wasn't sure what the steering committee thought was realistic here in the city.
So one of the things that we recommend with folks as they go through their RFP process is to share information about what our staffing looks like with the vendors who've installed their applications at other communities, and ask for what their schedules look like and those kinds of things. Organizations really wrestle when they go through projects that take more than 2 years, 3 years. We do see that. That is probably more resident within large organizations, big companies or things like that. Great questions.
Any other questions? Thanks, Sean.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Are we ready with Metropolis?
Madam Chair, to the council, first of all, thanks for allowing this time for Robert Luce. I like this, he's the new executive director of projects. I thought it would be a good opportunity for him to tell you what has been going on. There has been a lot of things happening within the Aerotropolis, very positive. And with that, I'll turn it over there. Yeah.
Hoping to hear about
Good
it.
afternoon, everyone. We had some technical difficulties with the presentation, so I'm going to kind of do this from the hip with the print off of the presentation. But I think George mentioned that we can send the presentation out to everyone later this evening or certainly tomorrow morning. So bear with me as I go through this. Quick show of hands though before we get started. How many are familiar with the Aerotropolis? And how many have a favorable opinion of the Aerotropolis? Okay, so you're right in line with all of the other communities that I've come into contact with since starting. Wanted to first and foremost introduce myself, talk about the Aerotropolis both as an entity and a region, because I think a lot of people have a different understanding of what the Aerotropolis is. I certainly didn't have the correct understanding before I took the job. To George's point, I want to talk about what we've been up to over the past 6 months and what the future plan will be over the next 15 months-ish through the balance of 2018. So first, again, wanted to introduce myself, Rob Luce. I was appointed on March 6th. I spent the previous 5 years working for the Detroit Regional Chamber downtown in the Economic Development Group there. I managed a program called Mich Auto. You might be familiar with Mich Auto. It's an association of Michigan-based automotive companies, OEM suppliers, and we did a number of different things to promote and grow the auto cluster throughout the state, not just in southeast Michigan. Born in Bay City, live in Canton now. Went to school at Adrian College, did grad school at Eastern Michigan, and joined the Aerotropolis again about 6 months ago. So the Aerotropolis is a 5-community, 2-county, public-private economic development partnership with the Wayne County Airport Authority. And our mission is to recruit corporate investment and growth into the regions surrounding DTW and Willow Run. We like to say that we are the premier site for greenfield expansion. That's not to say that there aren't existing sites in the Aerotropolis region, but quite frankly, those sites that exist for a reason. They are not the most ideal sites. So the real opportunity, the differentiating factor in this region compared to other regions in the state is the fact that we have land, lots of land. 6,000 acres of developable land to be exact. And those 6,000 acres of land are surrounded by a fairly unique transportation infrastructure, right? We've got 5 rail lines, four rail carriers, but 5 rail lines, the 3 freeways, and the 2 airports. And having that amount of land surrounded by that transportation infrastructure is somewhat unique to the region. In addition to those, call them founding assets, which helped create the Aerotropolis 10 years ago, we've now got the American Center for Mobility coming online. Has everyone heard of ACM, the American Center for Mobility? The American Center for Mobility is the redevelopment of the old Willow Run site in Ypsi Township. It's going to be a $100 million redevelopment of the 300-acre site out there. It will be a federally designated, connected, and autonomous vehicle test facility, which is where the automotive industry is going. And given the existing automotive footprint that we have in this state and in this region specifically, having an asset like ACM for this next generation mobility push, we think that will be a magnet for corporate investment, not just for Ypsi Township, but a lot of the surrounding communities, Taylor included. Personally, I think ACM, much like Willow Run and DTW, will be one of the key assets for the entire Aerotropolis region. Some of the other assets that you might not know about that we're going to start promoting a lot more going forward, we are part of the Greater Detroit Foreign Trade Zone. Anybody familiar with that? I wasn't either. So it's a 7, 8, maybe 9 county foreign trade zone that basically provides duty reduction, deferral, and elimination for companies involved in transportation, distribution, and logistics, which is one of our key industries. That's a key selling point that we have never really done a good enough job of promoting. We're 30 miles from the Port of Detroit, one of the largest steel handling ports in the country, given our automotive footprint here, and then obviously the border with Canada. What makes the Aerotropolis, the entity that is the Aerotropolis, what makes the Aerotropolis unique from some of the other economic development organizations in the state is that we are a designated Next Michigan Development Corporation. Anyone familiar with that term? Okay. So the Next Michigan Development Act is a series of bills that was passed back in 2010, coming out of the recession, and the idea was to designate areas around the state, and there are 6 or 7 areas around the state, that could take advantage of the new economy, so to speak, and diversify Michigan's economy away from being so auto-centric. And transportation, distribution, and logistics was seen as being one of those new industries, and the Aerotropolis region was designated as a Next Michigan Development Area. What that does, cut to the chase, we are empowered as an organization, as an entity, we are empowered to approve economic development incentives. So we can approve property tax abatements, we can approve personal property tax abatements, we have our own pool of Renaissance Zone designations, which is about as close to tax-free in the state of Michigan as you can get. The state of Michigan has been winding down that program for many, many years, but Next Michigan Development Corporations have their own pool of 25 to designate, with the community's approval, of course. Only one of those has been utilized, so there's 24 remaining, something that we can access and utilize going forward. And the 4th program, which I'll talk about in just a minute, we can access tax increment revenues to help fund public infrastructure projects. And that's one of the reasons why the Aerotropolis has never gotten off the ground. And there's a lot of reasons why the Aerotropolis never got off the ground. We won't really get into that tonight. But one of the reasons is that this is not an ideal location for greenfield investment because it's wet. It's a very, very wet area, floodplains and wetlands. And it's a difficult conversation to have with a company when you tell them you got to put $15 million in the ground before you can start building from the ground up. And oh, by the way, it's going to take you 2 years to get there. The deal is pretty much done at that point. With this new tool that we have access to, we can help subsidize the cost of those public infrastructure dollars and make it more cost effective for these companies to come in and invest here. It was the tool that we used to get the Amazon project across the finish line. I'm sure you all heard about that. You probably know already, but I think it's worth reviewing because it's changed from time to time. The participants involved in the Aerotropolis, starting east, moving west along 94, certainly Taylor, Romulus, Van Buren Township, and you go south on 275 and pick up Huron Township, cross the border into Washtenaw County. Ypsi Township is the 5th community, and then both Washtenaw and Wayne County are participants. The Wayne County Airport Authority, although not a party to the interlocal agreement, they are a member of our board of directors and they provide us with all of our marketing dollars. And then DTE Energy is the sole private investor that we have. And all of those entities have a seat or two on the board of directors who I report to. George and Mayor Sellers are Taylor's representatives to that board.